All right, welcome to the Armchair Commanders podcast. My name is John,
And I'm Jack.
and this week we are reviewing the movie Somme, which is the first documentary that we have reviewed, and we are doing it at the request of this week's guest, which is Rob from History in Your Hand. Rob, welcome. If you'd like to tell people about yourself and about your work on the different social media platforms.
Yeah, look, thanks for having me, guys. I'm Rob from History in Your Hand. I guess primarily have the YouTube channel and Facebook History in Your Hand page and TikTok and pretty much everywhere where you can make videos. And I try with a lot of my videos to kind of link them to something that people will know, like TV shows or movies, which is why I was quite interested when you guys invited me to do this. So yeah, hello.
It's great to have you. So, I guess my first question is, what made you choose this movie for this week?
Well, so when you guys got in touch, I was thinking about the different movies, and I a lot of the stuff I do with my channel is World War One or World War Two, and it's not to say that I would only do that, but those are the main two things that I do. And I thought World War One. You guys have done some World War One before. I've seen it, but I think you've done more kind of World War Two than World War One. So I thought I'd go with something World War One, and a lot of people when they think about World War One will know about the Battle of the Somme, and there are actually very few, I think, good movies that really depict the Battle of the Somme. But this is my favorite one, and it's as you mentioned, it's kind of like a docudrama, sort of half documentary, half movie. But it's a great movie, I think, for somebody who wants to learn something about the Somme. And documentary aside, it is really good as a movie in its own right. So that's why I picked it.
Yeah, when Jack first told me about the choice that you had come up with, I hadn't seen it. So this was my first time actually viewing the movie, and a couple of minutes in, I'm like, "Wait a minute, is this a documentary?" And it took me aback a little at first, but with it doing that kind of half documentary, half kind of drama film, you know, if you took out the narrator from this film, it almost could be its own standalone film just as it was. So I mean, it's very good, and I especially loved how different this documentary really is. I mean, there's definitely a lot of documentaries today that kind of try and take the approach that this film did. But it still does that typical like History Channel, like we'll do a dramatic scene and then it cuts to some stuffy professor sitting in his office talking about it. Um, versus this, it never cuts away from the people actually involved, or it never like cuts away from the story.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was that's it for me. I mean, I first watched this quite a long time ago. I think it came out like 2005, something like that, 2004,
Yeah.
2005, and I probably watched it a couple of years or so after that. So a good while ago, but it was really before I was as into the history of World War One as I am now, and more than anything, it gave me the hunger to want to learn more about it. And that's what I love about it. Much like Band of Brothers did for World War Two, and it had that same kind of impact on me.
So Jack, had you ever seen this movie before?
Nope.
What'd you think of it?
It was interesting. I like the at the end where it talks about each character and what happens to them and if they survived their life after the Somme. Am I
I
saying that
found
right?
So yeah, Somme, yeah, the Battle of the Somme, yeah, that's the
Got it.
right way, yeah.
see us being the typical Americans, we're not good at pronouncing stuff that we weren't involved in.
Well,
The
that
Battle
was
of the
part of
Somme.
yeah, that was part of why I picked it as well, right? Because it's there are some good World War One movies now when we're seeing more, right? Like All Quiet on the Western Front and 1917. We're seeing more, but I didn't want to pick one of those. I think you've done All Quiet on the Western Front before, and if ever.
We did the 1930s version of it. So
Oh, did you? Okay, okay.
yeah.
I kind of assumed you'd done the newer version. Okay, okay. But if ever you do one of those two, you've got to try and get Paul Reed. I don't know if you know Paul Reed. He does a podcast called The Old Front Line, and he has done some fantastic work where he's really compared like 1917 to the factual history, and I didn't want to steal that opportunity from you guys. So the Somme is the way to go.
Yeah, we've done a couple of World War One movies. We did The Lost Battalion, which is obviously an
Mm.
American film, and we did the original All Quiet on the Western Front. And it's kind of funny you mentioned we've done a lot of World War Two movies. It's honestly so hard to keep clear of World War Two movies. Not that there's anything wrong with them, like we love them, but
Oh yeah.
you know, you could just do episode after episode when it comes to World War Two. And so there's been times where when we sit down, we'll be like, okay, it's either got to be before or after World War II. Like that's our dividing line for picking a movie sometimes.
Nice. Well, like you say, there are so many great World War Two movies, right? You can't, you don't want to avoid them, but there's so much to, I think so much interesting stuff to learn, and the thing about World War One more than anything, and you get stories in all aspects of history, but with World War One, there are so many stories, like individual personal stories that really hit home, and that's what the Somme is all about, and that's why I thought it would be a great one to share with you guys.
So looking, I've reviewed some of the work that you've put forward, and you've actually been to the battlefield, correct?
Yeah, I've been so the Somme battlefields I've been to, yeah, quite a few times, and I've made so the. This movie inspired several of these specific videos I have on my channel. So, the some of the main characters in this are Captain Charlie May, Cyril Jose. That I have done specific videos on those stories, because while this movie does a great job with those stories, it doesn't talk about large sections of their stories. Cyril Jose, for example, in the movie, his story finishes when he gets wounded in no man's land, but his story of that day went on at hours beyond that point, and so I've made some videos all about that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
shot
I
in the
think
first 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so he was as with so many guys. So I mean, I believe it's something like 20,000 casualties in the first hour,
Jesus.
more than that. And as with so many guys, yeah, he was wounded in the first 5 minutes. He left his trench at 7:30, and by 7:35 he was laying wounded in no man's land, where he stayed for 24 hours.
it's either a terrible piece of luck or a really good piece of luck because you know getting wounded to the point where he couldn't advance may have very well saved his life in the end.
4 inches
Yeah, oh
away and
yeah.
would have died.
Yeah, yeah, literally, it's I think he was hitting the shoulder, I believe,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was yeah, absolutely. I mean, the casualties from the Somme, it's horrendous. I mean, we had the British had 60,000 casualties on the first day of the Somme. 20,000 of which were killed. So he beat some pretty tough odds to survive that, and he was in the first wave, so he was right at the front of it.
If I remember correctly, and maybe it was a different individual, but wasn't he the one? I was struck by one of the characters that they had read some of his personal letters about the experience of laying in no man's land. And at one point, he starts yelling out for stretcher bearers. And the the narrator for this individual, he's like, yeah, I finally broke down and had a bit of cowardice and called for medics. I'm like, hold up, isn't that their job? Like, since when is it being a coward to call for a medic when you're hurt.
I'd
Yeah,
gladly be a
no,
coward.
totally. Yeah, no, that's so actually that's Sergeant Tawny, who is
Okay.
the other character. No, but you're totally right. Same situation. Yeah, it was yeah, but that's no, exactly right. He was such a I think what they tried to predict with a lot of the characters, his character and Charlie Mays was that kind of feeling of pride that the guys had back then and respect, and he kind of talked about how he almost by laying wounded, he almost felt like he'd lost his self-respect, which is crazy when you think about it. What's the guy supposed to do, right? He's
Right.
laying wounded in no man's land. So yeah.
Well, it's like that. We've talked about it before on another episode, but it's kind of that like quintessential stiff upper lip mentality.
Yeah, yeah, it literally is, and they whenever you see kind of British World War One stuff, the officers are often sort of depicted as that, the kind of stiff upper lip, and there would have been a bit of that because a lot of the officers were recruited from the upper classes, and so that would have been the case a little bit. There would have been some of that certainly.
I The thing that really struck me with this movie, I don't know about you, but um, when they're telling the true stories of these guys, there's a lot of scenes or moments in this particular film that you see get translated over to other pieces of World War One media, such as when the lieutenant is uh, he gets pretty much pinned down and stuck in a giant shell crater, and he
Yeah,
spends pretty much the entire day of the battle there, and he's just surrounded by other dead soldiers, and then there's one soldier that comes up and he's like, "Which way are the Germans?" And then he immediately gets shot. It's very reminiscent of like the crater scene that we see in All Quiet in the Western Front.
mm.
Um, so I found it interesting that stuff that you would consider to be kind of dramatized for the sake of art or fiction is being presented as true facts here in this film.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, the guy, the lieutenant, as I'm gonna pronounce it for the British, of course, is Lieutenant Bundy. That was who was trapped in no man's land. And yeah, like you say, it's a true story. It's he was, and I believe with it's Alfred Bundy. I believe that was his first time going into combat, and so that's one heck of a day for your first day going into combat. And yeah, he was stuck out there in no man's land for I think the whole day, and then managed to work his way back after dark, I believe.
I uh, I don't know if it was appropriate, but I did get a bit of a chuckle. As Jack was mentioning, he appreciated the like end of the movie, like the little cut cards of this is what happened to them after the war, and his cut cards like he made it back to the line and was immediately promoted to captain. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there was an awful lot of that. Guys who had been into combat then getting quick promotions, largely because the difference between having led men into combat versus having not led men into combat was a huge experience difference in that situation, and also because a huge portion of the officers, especially that level of rank, the lieutenants, the captains, were killed, and so they needed a lot more of them very very quickly. So yeah, there was a lot of that. Yeah, yeah.
well, they if I remember correctly, didn't they say that the British lost about like a third of their forces that day during that offensive?
Yeah, the percentage of the forces, I wouldn't know that on the top of my head, but yeah, it was a huge portion. I mean, we had I believe it was something like, best part of 200,000 kind of went into action in the Somme. Of course, there'd have been other men, not directly related into the Battle of the Somme at the time, but yeah, it was. I mean, it was a huge portion. It was like 5 or 6 times the number of casualties that had been predicted for that battle. And of course, that was assuming they would have success, which they did not. So, yeah, well, it
Right.
didn't everywhere.
Yeah, I think success is a very loose definition in this war.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's if you look at the Captain Charlie May story they talk about, that technically was success. They one of the very few sections along the Somme front line where those guys did get to their objectives. They talk a lot in the movie about Danzig Alley, and that's the trench that the guys had been tasked with capturing, and they did capture it. But the 22nd Manchesters, as Captain Charlie May was the captain of, they lost about 700 guys, something like that. So like you say, success is a loose word in that situation.
Jack, what was one of your favorite character arcs in this movie?
Hmm. It was the commander, right? The one that made it to the line and was like, every German I shot at, he fell down, except for that one guy. I shot at him like 5 times and he wouldn't go down. I wasn't I wasn't mad that I couldn't kill him. I was mad I kept missing.
Yeah. That's Tawny. Yeah, he was actually I believe when the war first started, he was actually an objector to it. But then because of the kind of reports of like atrocities that were happening where when Germany invaded Belgium, he decided it was the right thing to do to volunteer and go and fight against it.
If I remember correctly, I think at the beginning of the film when they are doing the different individual introductions of people, I think wasn't he the one that they described? He's like before the war, he was a Christian socialist,
Yeah, yeah,
and when I heard that, I was like, "A what?" And that was where I was like, thanks to the modern technology of smartphones and whatnot, I was able to Google and I'm like, oh, this is a subsection of like British politics, or it was a religious movement that became a subsection of British politics. And I'm like, what's the direct translation to this? And literally like 2 sentences down on the Wikipedia page, it's like, this is most commonly associated to United States like Hutterite colonies. I'm like, well, that's super helpful. So
yeah. He was an interesting character, right? He's because obviously all of it's based on the writings of those guys. So yeah, it's interesting hearing the language they used in their letters and stuff is obviously very different from how we talk today, right?
yeah, like the one letter that they wrote is like, I only have time for a couple of lines because the post is going out soon. War is hell. Give them all my best.
Yeah, that was Cyril Jose, right? The young guy. Yeah,
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 I greatly appreciated his story arc, especially in the beginning, because with him we get to see that kind of stereotypical like training montage that we get in a lot of war movies and military movies. Where he like is unenthusiastically doing bayonet drills, like he just walks up to a straw dummy and just like kind of pokes it, and then the officer in charge of it is like, no, kill him.
yeah, yeah. No, he's probably my favorite character in it. Actually, Charlie May is kind of, I suppose, almost like the lead character in it. But Cyril Jose, I do like. I mean, he was, we're talking a 15, 16-year-old boy, and my older one of my two is 16, and you think about the age of those guys going and doing stuff like that, and just so some of his memoirs were written after the war, so he would have been at least a couple of years older. But some of it's from letters that he wrote, and even the way he articulates himself in the letters is way beyond his years of 15, 16.
uh the other part I loved about it too is when they're on the boat heading over to France, they really show his age, where he's showing the other people in his unit his family photos, like, here's my mom and here's my sister, and they all start like giggling, and he's like, what, and he's just snapping them back. um
Yeah, his kind of innocence for sort of what he was heading into, and that's probably the thing I love about his character is his innocence almost through the whole thing. Or he's talking about oh, we've been told it will be it will be nice and easy, and we're told there might be a couple of stray Germans who might snipe at us, but we'll deal with them, and it's all so innocent. And even I love the final piece for him where he does get hit, and even then he gets hit, and they kind of round it off with a line from him where he says like oh, I guess it must have been that stray German or something like that. Even though the guy's surrounded by machine gun fire and everything. That was good.
I think something that was really powerful was you know there's a scene where they're about to go over, but the shelling is still happening, and everybody's like cheering and whatnot. And, you have an officer yelling at guys to like get down from the top of the trench. And then maybe a minute later, the shelling stops, but they haven't been given the order to go yet. And there's such a complete mood shift from like, fuck yeah, we're going to own this. This is going to be easy, to, oh, wait, yeah, this, like, because even though this is probably like the first major offensive, they're not blind to what's happened the year and a half previous to this. Like, going over the top of the trench was almost always equated to like instant death.
Yeah, it's yeah, no, that, and there's a lot of stories talking about that. I think probably what they're trying to depict in that part of the movie is there are so many stories of guys who, when they talk about that moment when the British artillery stops, because the for the week previous to the first day of the Somme, the British had been shelling the German front lines for for days and days and days, well, for a week, hundreds of thousands of shells, and then it stops, and it's that moment. And guys have talked about how there was just a bizarre silence that was almost kind of shocking, where they haven't had silence for so long. And lots of stories about how guys could hear birds and things like that in that moment where they were waiting. And that's what the guys kind of stood there, and he's shouting like, come on, let us go, because they're so like het up and ready to move, but they've just been held in that moment.
And to be fair, I think in hindsight, we look at the shelling in the Somme. It was an abject failure, where it didn't accomplish what it was supposed to. Like, it didn't destroy
Yeah,
trenches, it didn't take out that many forces, and most importantly, it didn't destroy the barbed wire, or
yeah.
a majority of the barbed wire, that is. But also, you have to imagine, you're like, with the amount of ordnance that they were sending over, it wouldn't be an unfair assumption to think like, at the least, yeah, the barbed wire would be taken care of. But it's crazy how well those defenses stood up.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the idea was then that's I mean, there's a whole separate history podcast in talking about why it didn't work. But you're totally right. The artillery primarily was supposed to, of course, kill Germans in the front line. That was a part of it, but it was also supposed to clear barbed wire, and it was also supposed to take out the German artillery. And the big problems were exactly that. Where in a lot of cases they were using shrapnel shells as opposed to like high explosive shells, they didn't take out the barbed wire, and in a lot of cases they didn't take out the German artillery. So and the third one was that the Germans were in most cases in deep dugouts underneath the trenches. So as depicted in the Somme, the Cassell, the German guy, is the officer in the movie. When they're in that, in the shell, and they come out from the dugout, and so yeah, it was a combination. The Germans were still there, the artillery was still there, and the barbed wire meant that the guys couldn't just advance. Instead, they were getting funneled where there were small gaps in the barbed wire, which of course the Germans aimed their machine guns at.
I gotta say the bunker scenes for the German side were also pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like there's a moment where a guy comes back with like a loaf of bread,
Mm.
and his buddy's like, "Where'd you get this from?" He's like, "There was a couple of people who didn't take their share." And you, unless you're like paying really close attention, you don't realize the fact that what he means is that there's a couple of guys who are just dead and didn't get their allotment of a ration.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and there's almost like a moment where he kind of says, "Oh yeah, some didn't take their share," and they almost look at each other like that moment of realization that, well, it could just as easily have been us who didn't go and take our share. Yeah.
And in the same moment, we get the one and only fart joke in this movie, and I think it's the first fart joke we've had in any war movie to this point.
Monumental.
Because I don't know if you guys recall the moment when like a shell comes in and it makes the light bulb short out and it goes zzz, and the one German soldier's like, "Oh, excuse me."
Yeah. As a brown trouser moment, as we would probably say over here. Yeah.
And another monumental moment in this podcast history, the first time in history a Germans displayed anything resembling a sense of humor.
I thought that was good.
Why are they so angry all the time?
Yeah, I was pleased that they included some of the German story in it, because the again, those couple of guys were the officer was I think he was I'm pretty sure his surname was Cassell. I can't actually remember the name of the other guy, but they again, true stories, real memoirs from guys who were there. So I'm glad they included those in it, definitely.
Do you think they're so angry because they have to eat liverwurst on a regular basis, or?
I don't think I've ever had that.
I don't either. It doesn't sound stellar to me.
No, it doesn't sound great, does it?
Who knows? Maybe it's the greatest thing ever. I might be wrong, but
What was I going to bring up? Oh yeah, that dude who's pinned down in no man's land. And then the other soldier comes up to him. Which way to the German line? That way. Gets shot immediately.
And he's looking at him kind of mesmerized, like how do you not realize where it is? Like if you think all that machine gun fire is coming from the British line, I'm afraid you're wrong. Yeah.
God.
I think that's the other thing I really kind of appreciate about this film is just the, like in every other World War I film we get, like I said, going over the top of the trench has always been equated as like an instant death moment. Versus this, they get up and they walk and they make it like a good distance in the no man's land before the Germans start opening up on them. So it was interesting to see that contrast of like that kind of like peaceful, tense walk, and then it becomes the stereotypical World War One battle that we've come to expect in film.
Yeah, and so funny enough, with this with the Somme movie and the 1917, people have talked about it as well, and they say, oh, but it wouldn't have looked like that. There was grass and there was all sorts. Well, with the Somme, it probably wouldn't have looked quite that green in reality because the shelling had been going back and forth for quite a long time before, but it was ground that hadn't been fought over yet. So some of it wouldn't have been absolutely destroyed, and there are certainly stories of grass and the piece they don't depict in the movie with Cyril Jose. In his memoirs, his memoirs carry on, and his story of trying to get back across no man's land. He talks about the fact the long grass kind of saved him because he was crawling through the long grass, dodging the German snipers who had seen him trying to get back to his own line. So there certainly was some grass, yeah.
I think a lot of people probably equate World War One to the image that the most recent All Quiet on the Western Front movie did, which is that like everything is mud, everything is craters, you know, everybody is walking around in several inches of standing water. And, you know, it's like you said, not every inch of no man's land was like that.
Mm. Yeah, and certainly, you know, I mean, loads of it would have been, of course, it would have been, and all quiet on the Western Front is they don't kind of directly say, but it basically was based up further north, kind of Belgium and around Ypres or Ypres, and so that was ground that was just fought back and forth over the entire war, right? All that area, and certainly if you start, you know, moving into like the Battle of Passchendaele and those kind of things, that was mud, and rain. So yeah. Of course, this was in the summer as well. The Battle of the Somme was the 1st of July, so it was in the height of
Right.
summer.
Not everything can be in the winter when everything is terrible.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
What was that quote from the Great War? You can fight in the heat, you can fight in the snow, but you can't fight in the mud.
Oh yeah, it is. It's something like that. Yeah, I know the one you mean.
And that brief moment in the movie where he explains, like, oh, only there was a certain portion of the ordnances shot over that actually went off.
Mm.
And I was thinking, that's not going to be their problem for a while.
Yeah. Well, they reckon like 1 in 5 shells were
Wow.
duds. Something like something, you know, as maybe as high as that. You know, one you think about that, that's a huge percentage, right? So
Well, yeah,
you still find them in the ground today.
because there's still sections of these battlefields that are completely prohibited from anybody going to because of how much unexploded ordnance there is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If you go to a couple of the famous sites are, you know, Vimy Ridge, the Newfoundland Memorial Park. In both those places, they have areas which are fenced off because they know there is a lot of live ordnance still in the ground. Yeah.
I remember, I think this was within the last year, it might have been the last 2 years, but I saw an article. You know, there's an article that comes out every couple of months, you know, when it's a slow news day, and it's like, so and so found live shell in this forest in France. And it's like, yeah, no shit. They like, but
Yeah.
this one stuck out to me because it was farmer plowing field comes across gas shell and it started to go off when he hit it with like his tractor.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
him living there, obviously he knows, oh shit, this is probably what it is. Like if it was us here in America, we'd be like, what the fuck? Like, um, so this guy, he just boogies on out of there, calls the
Yeah.
authorities, and they show up and they remove the shell that went off, and then they excavated a little bit around it just to make sure that they didn't miss anything or if there wasn't any, you know, just double checking. And like a foot below where this shell was apparently an entire stockpile of like chlorine gas shells, like I mean like hundreds of them. And I was like, "Oh my god, that is it's just
Yeah.
insane to
Yeah.
think about." Also, like what is it like to be just like a farmer or just a homeowner in France with like a just like a standard insurance policy? Like, do they have a like a gas canister clause in their like homeowners insurance?
Well, it has a name. I don't know if you've heard of the Iron Harvest, but that's what they call it. So the large, in fact, probably most of the Battle of the Somme battlefields now are farmland, and so every kind of spring and autumn, the farmers go out and plough those fields, and they find shells and all sorts, and they stack them up at the side of the road, and then there's like a special service that comes around and collects them up, and you hear stories of, like, you know, a farmer who's used to this, you know, every day, pulling his plow along, hit something, goes round the back, oh, this 10-inch shell, and like throws it to the side of the field, and everyone else who's watching is like running for their life, and this guy's just, oh, this stupid shell, and throwing it out the way and carrying on with his plowing, you know. So it's called the Iron Harvest. They have it every year.
That's crazy to think about. Just throwing shells onto the side of the road like it's a
Yeah.
bag of leaves.
Yeah, it is. And you still see them now. My recent trip, I was over in a place just near Mametz in the woods there, and there was a huge shell just laying on the ground next to a field, which I imagine the farmer had probably found and had put it to the side of the field. Yeah, and it was probably waiting for someone to be collected. The rule is you can look, but don't touch them. You don't want to go too close.
Jack, you ever find anything cool out on your ranch, or is it still kind of just barren out there?
I found an actual hatchet one time just out in the middle of the field.
Oh
No,
wow.
I was going to restore it just to see if I could, but I lost it. And to this day, I have no idea where that hatchet came from because it was in a fairly remote part of the ranch. It was
Yeah,
dull, slightly rusty, but still a cool find.
That
Jack's
is a cool
family
find.
operates a rather large ranch out in the Dakotas, so
Yeah,
uh,
cattle baron.
Wow. So would that be land that would it have had battles there in the past? I'm not like the Civil War and stuff. I know a little bit about, but not.
not Civil War, more like our Indian Wars.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, jury's still out on that. I don't think there was a battle, but so one day actually, I just remembered this. I was out feeding cows with my dad, and all of a sudden he stops his tractor and gets out of it and stands in the field. And I thought that was weird, so I drove over to him and I'm like, what's going on?" And he points in front of him and says, "See those two divots right there in the ground?" And they're like these two divots in the ground. And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Those are the previous owners of land. Their names are Mr. and Mrs. Puts on his shoes." And he told me that Mr. Puts on his shoes had braids in his hair and beads, and where they buried him, an ant colony made their home. And every so often, the ants would dig so deep that they would find the beads and bring it up to the top and lay it on their nest.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was one of the most surreal moments of my life. Him telling me all of this just out of nowhere one day.
It's a heck of
Wow.
a story.
But
That is, yeah.
as far as battles go, I don't think there was.
Yeah, I think a lot of the fighting in the Dakotas was more on the western half of the state, anyways.
Mm, Wounded Knee, that was a big one.
Wow. I'd love to get over there at some point and do some videos on the some of the history over there that you guys have got. You know, it's obviously some of my other fellow history YouTubers. I know you've had JD from the History Underground on your podcast before. He's done, of course, loads of videos around those, and it's got me
Right.
thinking. I'd love to get over there at some point. Yeah.
I see. I live in Colorado, and I didn't like obviously like Colorado is a part of like Western history and all that, but I didn't realize like how much stuff they had going on here until I actually moved here. Um, like the weirdest story, or I don't want to say the weirdest, but one of the weirder stories is like a lot of our modern like animal cruelty laws that we have in the United States comes from an incident that happened here in Colorado. And it happened when Teddy Roosevelt visited a mine in this state. And it was either a silver or gold mine. And he was touring this mine, and there was a couple of donkeys that they had like deep down, basically acting as uh, like they would push the carts back and forth through these tunnels. And he asked, he's like, "So when do they get sunlight?" And the miners are like, "What are you talking about? They just live down here." And he's like, "This is bullshit." So he literally, after that experience, he like went back and told Congress like, "You need to make some laws." And basically that's how our first animal cruelty laws came into effect. So after his visit there, basically these donkeys that were in mines had to be guaranteed so many hours of daylight each day. Like they couldn't just shove, pack animals down into this cave for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
It
well,
was
I'm sure, undoubtedly, I'm sure we had stuff like that going on here as well, right? We had, mining in vast parts of our country back in, around the time of the First World War. We had miners working down there, so yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's crazy to think all these little different stories that, exist everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating, absolutely.
So I think it's that time of the show. Jack, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, I was drinking a root beer, but I finished it. Now I have no more root beer.
Was it your special? What did you call the root beer drink
Root
last time?
Jack.
Root Jack. It was
Yeah, Jack
Jack
Daniels
Daniels and
mixed with root beer. I got him a genius.
so was it that or was it just a regular root beer?
No, it's just a regular root beer. But now I
Okay.
have no more root beer, and I'm sad.
The real question is what kind of root beer? Because I'm gonna judge you very harshly on what the brand was.
If I say A and W, would you? Yeah, it was A and W.
I guess that's fine. As long as it wasn't Barks or something.
No, I'm not a heathen, but now that I mention, I'll be back in just a fraction of a second because now I want more root beer.
Rob, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, so I've gone for I'm a pretty simple guy when it comes to alcoholic drinks. So I've just got a beer, but I thought seeing as we were going to talk about some British military history, I made sure I got a British beer. So I know it doesn't work for the podcast, but I can show you on the on the video. It is Camden Hell's Lager. It's from a brewery called the Camden Town Brewery, which is London based. Just a fairly simple lager.
Nice. You know, I'll probably end up sharing a picture of the can or something to our social medias. We have a recurring joke. We have zero sponsors, but every episode we talk about people that could sponsor us. So if
Like
the
Camden
can
Hells.
yeah, if the Camden Brewery would like to sponsor the show, we'd be more than happy to have you guys.
It's a good beer. It would be a good choice. I actually going to be controversial for all of your British listeners. A lot of British beers are we have a lot of like ales and stuff like that in this country, which I'm not so big on. My favorite beers are the beers that people would make fun of me for. A lot of the American beers I like Coors Light, I like Bud, stuff like that. But this is a lovely beer, Camden Hell's Lager. Camden Hells do other things. They do like ales and stuff like that too. But Camden Hell's Lager is a good beer. It's nice.
Man.
See,
Well,
you usually the shtick on this show is I give Jack a whole lot of shit for his drink choices, and
oh yeah,
I got
Princess Yum Yum.
that's where I'm going with this is
Oh,
that
okay.
the last time we had a British guest on, I got a taste of my own medicine. We had the actor Matthew Leach on. He was in Band of Brothers, and he runs the We Happy Few 506
Yeah,
podcast.
I know Matt. I've been on a few tours with him. Yeah.
So we had him on, I want to say like a month or so ago. And when we were talking about our drink choices, that evening I was drinking. Was I drinking Princess Yum Yum? I think I was drinking some sort of peach drink.
Yeah, I think you was it Princess Yum Yum? I thought it was.
Anyways, I was drinking. There's a local brewery here. It's called the Denver Brewing Company, and they make great beers. And one of my favorite beers from them is called Princess Yum Yum. It's a raspberry kolsch, and the just the look of disgust that he gave me when
The
I
look of English disgust.
just
Well, yeah.
just
So Matt's from up north, right? So that's prime ale drinking country. That is. So I'm sure he didn't take kindly to that. Same as he wouldn't with me. He'd call me a soft southerner drinking my lager. I'm sure.
And I was drinking some fruity beer as well, and he was like, "That's how you get your ass kicked in England, ordering one of those."
Well, I tell you what. To make him ashamed of me, I have sat in my fridge. I haven't tried it yet, so I couldn't tell you what it's like. But my brother bought me for my birthday a bottle of peach Bellini flavored beer. So that is sat in my fridge, and I will when I try it, I will send you a photo of it so you guys can see what it was.
so today for myself, because I was anticipating getting some sort of British contempt for my drink choice. I I've drank this drink on the show before, but it's called Musket Haze, and I am proud to say, although they are not our sponsor, it's made by the Hackensack Brewing Company, who does follow us on Instagram. So at least we have that going for us.
Oh, okay, that's something. Well,
Yeah,
there's
it's a step in
potential
the right
for a sponsor
direction,
there, right? Yeah, there
right?
you go.
Anyways, it's called Musket Haze IPA, and it's got this lovely.
Oh man, that's a piece of
Ooh.
artwork.
Yeah, so the artist is called T Rexler. He, I have his artwork and his page shared on our stuff, but for our viewers at home who haven't seen it, it is a wonderful mural painting of some Minutemen cutting down redcoats uh,
Wow.
at the at a battle in the Revolution. So
We kind of went for an anti-British beer almost there, then. So
yeah,
Was that
it's also the
intentional?
only it's also the only beer I had in my fridge. So I need to restock. I had started with a glass of wine, but I only had like an eighth of a glass left in the bottle I had. So I grabbed two drinks because I was thinking, oh, France wine, that'll be a good mixture. But I think it is about time we give this film a rating. Now, usually, I don't know if you've caught many of our other shows, but we usually do a custom rating for the films that we review. Um, Jack, do you have any ideas what our custom rating ought to be?
Uh, hmm.
you
Fart
mean like instead of
jokes.
stars?
Yeah, instead of stars, it's.
Okay, yeah.
I, I don't know. Do you have any ideas, Rob?
We can go with why don't we go with how many peach beers? That sounds like the way to go, right?
See, I personally was thinking pictures of sisters, but
All right, sister pictures.
sister pictures.
I don't have a sister, but I'll make it work. You know.
No,
You know,
neither
it's
do
odd
I.
because this is the second time this is the second time a World War One film has made some sort of variation of sisters into the rating system, because for All Quiet on the Western Front, the original version, our rating was 1 to 5 sister kisses.
Oh, okay.
So the British are more refined. They only have pictures of their sisters. They don't kiss their sisters like the Germans do. So Jack, on a scale of 1 to 5 sister pictures, what do you give this film?
I'd give it 4 sister pictures.
Was your justification for that rating?
Hmm. See, I really did like the movie, and I had a good time with it. It just, I wanted more. If that sounds weird. And like the where are they now esque ending. I kind of wanted to know more about the soldiers and not just, oh, he was shot, went home, and became a communist.
That one did strike me like one title card was after the war
Odd.
he became a communist. It's like, is there more
Did he
to
now?
this statement?
You want to follow that up?
Well, that's what makes it a fascinating movie, right? You've got to follow up the stories of them, right? Captain Charlie May, sadly, his story ended right there. But make sure look up the stories of the other guys and the rest of the stories. I mean, Cyril Jose probably has the most fascinating story beyond the movie. He he lay in no man's land for 24 hours. He had to get back to the British front line. He pretty much saved another soldier's life on his way back across. Another guy who was too wounded to go anywhere. He got him bottles of water and stuff. And there's some great stories to follow up. And even Captain Charlie May, the letters that they use in the movie, there's a whole host of his letters. It's been published into a book, his whole collection of letters, and the book, I forget what it's called. It's called something like, I think it's called Fighting Alongside Friends or something like that. Is the whole collection of his letters. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. Sorry, we're rating sister pictures, right?
We're all about tangents here. Rob, how many sister pictures do you give this film?
I can see where Jack's coming from. I'll go with a 4 as well, and I tell you why I'll go with a 4 rather than a 5. I think it's a great movie. Anybody who wants to learn something more about World War One in general, but especially the Battle of the Somme, it's a great movie to go and watch because it will ignite your hunger to learn more, and it gives you a really good understanding of what happened at the Battle of the Somme. But what I think it could be is it's so close to being the thing that we're missing, and that is a great movie about the Battle of the Somme. And there are other movies that have talked about it. There's the Trench with Daniel Craig, and there's movies that have talked about the Battle of the Somme, but no really good ones. And this is so close to almost being that, but it's still, as much as I like it, and I think it still works as a movie, it still is a documentary movie. And so I can't give it the 5, unfortunately.
It was very educational.
It was. It's also, there's a lot of documentaries I like. But there's always that kind of stigma that documentaries are boring, will put you to sleep. Like there there are people out there that watch documentaries because they like documentaries. I think this is a documentary that even a person who's not big into like education can get into. Like if you just like war films or if you like action films, I think this is a documentary you can get into just in the way it's just the way that's presented. Also, like we said at the beginning, this is a documentary that it is 1 or 2 steps away from just being an outright, dramatic film in its own right.
Yeah, totally.
If you subtract the narrator and then just add a couple of other scenes to it, you have a solid war movie.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. Yeah.
I think for that, and especially for a film that was produced in 2005, you take this in comparison to other documentaries that are made in 2005 or even other actual like big budget war movies in 2005, this is a very well done film. So for that, I'll give it 5 sister pictures.
Nice.
But there's a caveat. The 5th sister picture, like the corners are ripped off and the picture itself has been kind of crumpled, like it's been in the bottom of a backpack or something. So it's like a 4-5, if you will.
That's all right though. That's okay. It's done all right there. That's not too bad.
So Jack, does Rotten Tomatoes have a rating for this, or is it just IMDb? Or
I couldn't find anything on Rotten Tomatoes for this movie, but I did find an IMDb, and The IMDb rating is 7.3 out of 10.
Okay,
So
that
yeah, it's similar.
I think it's a teeny bit on the low side, but it's pretty close to what we were thinking.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things where it's exactly like you started to say. I think if somebody is looking for a war movie about World War One and they can't find one, I think if they watch this, they wouldn't be disappointed, right? And that's not bad, because a lot of the times, if you want a war movie and you watch a documentary, you might think, "Oh, it's a good documentary," but it isn't the war movie I was looking for. But I think somebody who wants that, they wouldn't come away feeling like they've watched an out and out war movie, but they would. I don't think they'd be disappointed with watching this, and hopefully your podcast gets some people to go watch it, right?
Right. I think it's a good bridge between the two separate genres.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
So now that we've done our review, Rob, I'll leave the floor to you to share your different social media accounts, projects, where people can find your work. If there's anything coming up that you want the people to know about, the floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah, cool. So thank you. So yeah, look, history in your hand is my thing. If you can find it on YouTube. Specifically it's History in Your Hand 1787. You can find it under, but if you just search History in Your Hand, I think you probably will find me. History in Your Hand is my tag on Instagram, where I do a load of stuff. I do loads of reels and shorts and stuff on there, which are interesting. History in Your Hand on TikTok, history underscore hand on Twitter, or X, I should say, if you want to find me over there. And yeah, I make a whole host of World War One, World War Two, primarily videos, and lots of things that relate to TV shows. I've done loads of stuff that relates to Band of Brothers, if you're a fan of that. Especially lots of shorts, kind of showing the real places that were depicted in Band of Brothers, which I enjoy making. And I'm going to carry on doing that stuff. I've got a really exciting trip coming up in October, where I'm going to Austria, to the Berchtesgaden and the Eagle's Nest, with Matt and We Happy Few 506 you mentioned earlier. Definitely be making some more Band of Brothers related stuff up there. And then later on in the year, I'm going to Verdun, which is another whole section of World War One content. So if you like history and you like Band of Brothers TV shows, things like that, check it out if you're interested.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for joining us, Jack. Do we have anybody on the schedule next week?
I don't think so. I thought you had something lined up.
I didn't. Is it your turn or my turn?
I think it's your turn.
Okay. Seeing as it is my turn, I actually have a choice that will include a great opportunity for our listeners. I'm going to go with 2011's The Devil's Double.
What's that?
It is a movie about a guy who fought in the Iran-Iraq War, and then when he gets back home, he basically gets forced into becoming a body double for one of Saddam Hussein's sons.
Wow, this looks like an interesting movie. And it's funny you mentioned that, because earlier this week I fell down an insomnia driven Wikipedia rabbit hole where I read about Saddam Hussein's son Uday, and his Wikipedia page reads like a fucking Far Cry villain. Like,
Yeah, he wasn't a great guy.
he gifted his dad gold plated AK-47s. He would demand people party with him and shoot at their feet if he didn't think they were dancing enough, and just other insanity like that.
So, with this movie choice, I shared this with Jack a little bit ago, but Rob, were you ever familiar with the baseball card company called Topps?
Oh yeah, yeah. Funny enough, I used to collect their basketball cards back when I was younger. I'm a big NBA fan, so yeah, no, I know them. Yeah.
So in the mid '90s, they came out with a series it was literally a Gulf War trading card series.
Wow.
Yep. And it had like all the different generals and like different card, like you could get like an Abrams tank card or like a General Norman Schwarzkopf card. Um, Something that's become a little bit of a meme recently is people have started rebuying these packs of cards because everybody has been hunting or searching for it's air quotes, but they're calling it the Saddam Hussein rookie card.
Okay. Wow.
So, in my possession, I have the Saddam Hussein rookie card. So, as of this episode, I will have a post up on our social medias. The condition is that you like the Armchair Commander's Instagram page and then share the post, and you will be entered in to potentially win the Saddam Hussein rookie card from the Topps Trading Card Company. And we will announce the winner during the uh, release of the Devil's Double review.
Sounds
But
cool.
Rob, if you're interested in a Saddam Hussein rookie card, share the post.
I'm sharing it definitely.
So, anything else, Jack?
I think that's it.
Alrighty. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us. Rob, again, thank you so much for coming with us. If anybody would like additional content from us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the Armchair Commanders Podcast. We also have a YouTube channel called History Apprentice. If you don't like that the name is different, deal with it. Until next week, I have been John.
And I've been Jack.
And I'm Rob.
And we will catch you next week.
Bye.